It's the tale of two tigers. Tonight, LSU will face off against Clemson in the national championship.
Certainly there is no shortage of Tiger mascots, but how do schools actually get their mascots? Here with the history is Dr. Aaron Astor, Associate Professor of History from Maryville College. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we know we're talking Tigers, but let's start with the Clemson Tigers. How did that come to pass?
Sure. The Clemson Tigers, actually, like a lot of teams, wanted to have a mascot similar to some Ivy League schools. So they essentially got it from the Princeton Tigers. The founder of the football team, I guess was the founder of the football team in the 1890s, immediately he admired Princeton University and so took not only the Tigers name, but came as close to the orange and black of Princeton Tigers, but then the black became, I don't know, whatever that version of blue is, whatever purplish blue that they are. But so that one is directly related to the Princeton University Tigers.
Okay. So what about LSU's Tigers?
LSU is a very different story.
Okay.
The LSU Tigers are actually connected back to the Civil War. There were several companies and regiments that were formed in the early months of the war, one of which was called the Louisiana Tigers. It was called the Zouave group, which meant they wore these fancy uniforms. Some of them had fought actually overseas. And this is one group that had a lot of German and particularly Irish immigrants who worked in the docks of New Orleans. And they were known as being kind of roughnecks, and they had a really fierce fighting reputation. So as they went and fought in the Confederate Army in Virginia, they got this reputation of people fighting like tigers. And that came to start to symbolize all the Louisiana regiments. They all fought like Louisiana Tigers. And then later on, when the football team was created, that was known as being a very fierce name and associated with Louisiana's history. So they became Louisiana State University Tigers.
That's fascinating. All right. Unfortunately, we're not in the championship game, but we do want to get a little history lesson, if you will, about the Tennessee Volunteers.
Sure. The Tennessee Volunteers, some people think that's from the Civil War too. It's actually much earlier. During the War of 1812, the President James Madison had called up volunteers to serve, in particular the southern campaigns in Alabama and ultimately Battle of New Orleans, Andrew Jackson. And so many Tennesseans had fought, so it developed this reputation for volunteers. And then later on in the Mexican War in the 1840s, when another Tennessean president, James K. Polk, had encouraged many Tennesseans to fight and volunteer there. So those two wars gave the state of Tennessee its reputation as the volunteer state. And so that stuck with eventually the university.
Fascinating history. We've learned so much.
And what a unique area to study. What fascinates you about mascots?
Well, I mean, mascot, we see them all the time. I mean, I'm interested in how the Civil War sort of lives out, or all of these elements of history live out in modern day. I mean, there's a lot of things we take for granted that we don't really think of their Civil War origins. And this is true on the Union side as well. The Kansas Jayhawks were associated very much with Kansas Jayhawkers during the Civil War. And of course, close to home, Lincoln Memorial University is the Rail Splitters. So obviously that name is connected to the Union side in the Civil War. It's just interesting to see how elements of the past sort of live their way forward. There's been a lot of controversy, of course, about monuments and flags and so on. But in more mundane ways, the Civil War really establishes a lot of our common symbols and language without us even being aware of it.
Yeah, a history lesson in it all. All right. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
sir. We do appreciate you.
Sure.